There is an old story or almost a riddle that perhaps you've heard, especially as a kid, to help you critically think, where a man is offered $1 million on the one hand, or on the other, a penny on a chessboard, on one square of the chessboard, and 2 pennies on another square, 4 pennies on the third square, 8 pennies on the fourth square, etc., continuing to double all the way across the chessboard. And of course, if you have pretty good critical thinking or good intuition, you're going to think, the chessboard is obviously going to be the winner here, because why all this elaborate setup if the intuitive thing, the $1 million, is wrong? So I don't know how much the chessboard is going to be worth, but I'm going to go with the chessboard. It's probably more than $1 million. And you'd be right. You'd be right. Halfway across, through square 32, it's worth $43 million. But all the way across, it is worth $92 quadrillion. That is 1,700 times the entire GDP of the world. It's about 400 times the wealth of planet Earth. And so your choice is between $1 million and 400 Earths worth of total wealth. Nobody has any idea when they first engage with this problem how much bigger this is than $1 million. It is billions of times bigger than $1 million. It's not like a billion versus a million. It's like a billion versus a dollar, and lots of them. The number is so big that we cannot wrap our heads around it. And halfway across that chessboard, the amount of money is a rounding error for the end result. This is how exponential growth works. It runs away. It looks very boring and very slow until suddenly it is very much not. Anytime we are running into something that has exponential growth, that is undergoing exponential growth into the future, we are going to be very, very bad at being able to intuitively model in our minds where it's going to go by when. And we're facing that today in a way that really matters. Welcome to Reconsider, a podcast about examining your life because the unexamined life is not worth living. I'm Eric, your host. Some of you may know me from Reconsider with Xander, the podcast about politics, but we don't do the thinking for you. I'm going to tell you a story later about my return and why the break and why I'm back and why the change. I'll do that later. For now, we're going to keep talking about this topic. Why on earth am I talking to you about exponential growth? The reason is because humans tend to believe that the future is going to be pretty much like the past, with maybe some changes. In our evolutionary history, this made a lot of sense. It was largely true until more or less the generation before mine. Until more or less the beginning of the 20th century, for everybody, the future was a whole lot like the recent past, with a few exceptions, a few revolutions. Right? The Industrial Revolution, various political revolutions. But otherwise, for all of human history, that was true. In fact, I even hypothesized that in our caveman days, it was evolutionarily advantageous to assume that the near future would look a lot like the past. And if you assumed that the near future would look very different from the past, you were usually wrong. And therefore, almost certainly, you did not perform as well in reproduction and survival than those who assumed that the future would look roughly like the past. And so, when we're predicting the future, we tend to keep doing that, even when the evidence is starting to show us that that is not true. The evidence is showing us that the capability growth in artificial intelligence is exponential. We are at the boring part of that chessboard. 2 pennies becoming 4, 4 becoming 8, 8 becoming 16. And if we were to look at that and roughly project it out somewhat linearly, we would say that over 64 of these periods, you're looking at maybe a few dollars, maybe a few tens of dollars. And so if our brain goes, okay, I see how much AI has been changing, it's going to roughly keep changing the same amount. And that's what the more aggressive lay people are predicting. And then we think it's going to, in my lifetime, it's going to become pretty capable. It's going to do a lot of stuff. Most people who think about this, including me, will look at various professions and say, oh boy, AI is coming for a whole lot of these professions. Law, right? A lawyer's job, most of a lawyer's job for most of the time, especially at the beginning of their career, is to know stuff about the law. The law is an unbelievably large corpus of material that is written in text. That is, by design, extremely linear. And it is very, very, very hard for one person to know any significant amount of it. But that is their job. That is something AI already does better than lawyers. Right? If we trusted AI to not hallucinate, we would not need lawyers. Turns out, AI is a lot better at writing software than we are. We have some people directing it, but already in July 2026, a lot of CTOs are going to their teams and saying, you're not a coder anymore, right? You're something different. You're a product developer using AI to develop product, but you don't write code. And you are not a coder. The skill you learned to write code in a given language is no longer relevant. Now, that's not entirely true for everybody all the time. It is certainly the case that even at Anthropic, AI is writing the majority of its own code. We'll get back to the implications about that. We can also see looking forward that AI is probably going to come after the finance bros, right? AI is probably going to be better at this kind of economic analysis. And so a few people who are not very good at economic analysis will soon be able to use AI to do very sophisticated economic analysis. I did a relatively sophisticated economic analysis for myself about whether to buy a house under certain conditions, interest rates, etc., or continue renting indefinitely. And it was very, very smart. It didn't just do what I wanted. It had a lot of guidance on maybe we should do it this way. We should consider XYZ. I was like, yeah, I wasn't even considering that. Didn't even think about it. What's actually happened over the past few years is remarkable if we review it. Part of the reason I'm creating this episode is that I believe that almost everybody who is not a super expert at AI is vastly, vastly undercalling how much capability is going to be developed in AI and how quickly. For a long time, AI was always 15 to 25 years away. It's here now. It's here now in a very real way, where it is doing cognitive work that humans once did, and better than they did it. And we'll go deeper into the economic consequences of that in another episode, because we will have a series on AI. But over the past few years, so many of the predictions that I read about that are popular in both kind of like pop sci magazines such as Wired, but also on, in serious newspapers, most of the predictions are that AI is going to get hung up by some inability to do something. It's going to get stopped by something. I remember a few years ago, there was the prediction that AI was going to collapse in on itself. Actually, I don't even think it was a few years ago. I think it might have been a year ago. I saw quite frequently a prediction that AI was going to collapse on itself because it had produced a lot of slop out on the internet, very true, and it reads the internet to learn, very true. But there was this assumption by these people who are not AI researchers, who have no expertise in this field. There's this assumption that there's absolutely no capacity for the AI to be able to differentiate what is AI slop and what is not. But of course, it's trivial to identify what's AI slop, so the AI ignored it. And those predictions of this collapsing in on itself, it was because there were some hallucination issues for a bit. But they were all completely wrong, and they were proven wrong within literally weeks of being made. For a long time, until very, very recently, this was certainly happening in late 2025, economic and financial journals were predicting that AI wasn't going to make any money. They were having trouble getting people to pay for it. And then Anthropic didn't have that problem anymore. And then a few months later, people predicted, well, they're not going to be profitable. They're getting revenue, but it costs more money to get that revenue than they're making. Anthropic was profitable in Q1 of 2026. And their revenue is growing at more than 10x year over year. Now, if you think about what doubling year over year does, that's 2x year over year. If you think of what doubling year over year does back at our chessboard, 10x is really, really, really fast. I'll leave that as an exercise to you, that if Anthropic is making $1 billion now and 10x is for even the next few years, what's going to be happening? Most people who are poo-pooing what's going to happen with AI are actually looking not even to right now, but they're looking a few months back. One of the major poo-poos that I see right now or that's claiming that there's going to be a major bottleneck for AI is that infrastructure is going to be an issue. And it is a challenge. In this case, data centers, there's going to be pushback on building data centers on land near people's homes. Great. I guarantee you that the world of venture capital and the people who have poured hundreds of billions of dollars into AI are aware of this, and they're betting on startups that are solving it. And I actually know a few of them. One of them is, actually multiple, are working on building data centers in the ocean using a combination of wind, solar, tidal power, and ocean cooling. And I remember describing this to someone, a smart engineer, and he said, oh, well, the salt water will corrode all the chips. I just looked at him, I said, look, I didn't read about it, but I'm sure they just have an exchanger where they have fresh water inside and they have an exchanger to exchange heat with the salt water. He said, oh yeah. I keep noticing that whenever I hear AI talked about, there's this reflexive knee jerk from people that to sort of say, oh, this isn't going to work. This totally won't work. I'll get into dexterous robotics another time. But dexterous robotics are coming, and they're coming very, very quickly. And there are a whole bunch of startups with billions and billions in investment and a lot of progress. I know one of them very well, that are doing amazing things with dexterous robotics that can go out in the world and begin to do things based on prompts. All right? They can't take your job yet if you're a carpenter, but how many years will it be? So let's look back over the last few years. The thing that got me really thinking, holy moly, this is happening way faster than I appreciated, was in late 2025? Yeah, like less than a year ago, I think. Google VO3 came out. And Google VO3 was their video platform, and they put out this amazing trailer that had not only unbelievably realistic video, but also like beautiful, fantastic animation, but completely coherent, and seemingly creative, seemingly able to, I have no interest in saying right now, like, well, is the real creativity? What is the qualia? We'll get to that another time. But its capability, I looked at it and I said, this is way better than 99.99% of people trying to make video. And it does it a lot cheaper than having someone sit down and record this stuff and, get the actors and get the scenes and get all this stuff and actually record the video. And so, movie making is going the way of the dodo, except for, sort of like theater still exists, right? Still, people go to live theater, even though there are movies, right? And it's more expensive to do live theater in a way because the people have to act it over and over rather than once. In the very near future, people are just going to be cranking out very good videos with AI. And Google VO3 in late 2025 came out after, maybe a year of just really sloppy, nasty, terrible video stuff being out there, but maybe a year of it. And nobody saw it coming. Nobody outside of like the front end researchers and the people on the leading edge. And at the time I wasn't working in an AI company. I am now. But nobody saw Google VO3 coming. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody really appreciated that Claude Code was taking over all of software engineering until it was more or less a foregone conclusion. Now Claude Code writes most of the world's code. Think of how fast that happened, right? In the early 2020s and 2022, less than 4 years ago, I mean, a chatbot like OpenAI's chatbot GPT could barely stay coherent. It's 4 years later, AI is writing the code of the world. Right now, over the past few years, AI has been able to smash PhD level experts in a exam called GPQA Diamond, where you take human level PhD experts on their own expertise. They tend to score about 65 to 74% on these exams. And AI is well above 96% now. It was at 55% in 2024. It's at 96% now. And the poo-pooers will go, wow, that's just static knowledge. Okay, but 2 years ago, the claim was that, right, it couldn't understand the questions and be able to contextualize things well enough to be able to answer these questions accurately, consistently. And the point is, now AI can answer extremely difficult PhD level questions consistently, accurately, much better than humans. There's this test called the NETR Task Horizon test, where it measures essentially how long a model can reliably do a real-world task on its own without either falling apart or needing supervision or getting stuck. That has been doubling every 4 to 7 months. Consider the chessboard. It's not 64 years that it's going to be quadrillions of pennies. This is 4 to 7 months. So it's going to be 30 years that it's going to be quadrillions of pennies, quadrillions of dollars, right? Hundreds of quadrillions of pennies. That's what we're looking at here. It's 30 years. If it keeps doubling every 4 to 7 months, it will be 30 years before the length of a real world task that AI will be able to handle. In 30 years, it will be like to the end of the universe, right? And so for the next few years, it's going to double from a few hours to a few more hours. Like, oh, look, it's a day. And then you blink and it's years. Years of autonomy. Brian Kaplan, he's a great economist. He gave ChatGPT a D on his 2022 labor economics midterm, and he publicly bet, like with money, that no AI would ace his exams before 2029. It was 3 months later that it got an A. One of the reasons Kaplan's amazing is that he keeps receipts for his own predictions, which if you've read Talib's Skin in the Game or anything like that, if someone's not keeping receipts and following up with you to hold themselves accountable, you shouldn't ever listen to their predictions. It's worthless, right? So Kaplan's great. So I want you to think about how far it's come in the last couple of years. 3 years ago, it was kind of a chatbot. Now it makes world-class video, codes most of the world. I know people who aren't software engineers that go, wow, it must be crap code. Well, it must not be, because it's not all falling apart. And part of the problem with AI's development is there's this thing called the jagged edge. And the jagged edge constantly moving. And what the jagged edge is if you look at various tasks that humans do that are important to humans, AI is very, very, very good in demolishing humans at some of them. And those are very cognitive. I talked about law and finance, software engineering, and there are some that it is absolutely crap at. There's a test of dynamic problem solving right now called ARC-AGI 3. It's interactive reasoning. It was launched March 2026. Humans typically score 95 to 100%. The best models score under 0.4%. This test was created because the previous version, ARC-AGI 2, in about a year, the AI models went from 0 to 85% on scoring it. It's a reasoning test, but it's not an interactive reasoning test in the same way. And so the people who are kind of poo-pooing this can cherry pick some of the stuff that AI is currently bad at. And they can say, wow, AI can't do this at all. It scores a 0. Woo. But are they keeping their receipts? Are they looking up a year from now and saying, well, I thought AI wasn't going to go far because it didn't do all this thing, but now it does it better than humans. That keeps happening. It keeps happening over and over and over. People keep making this prediction that AI is going to more or less get stuck at roughly where it is, or maybe a little bit further, or maybe it'll progress eventually, but it's going to take some time. And they keep being wrong. As progression is getting faster and faster and faster. My favorite example of this is that it's July 2026. Since January, AI has solved 11, I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's that Hungarian mathematician Erdos, whatever. ERDOS, and the O is like little marks on top. It solved 11 of those problems, and including using techniques that human mathematicians had overlooked entirely, and just like not thought to use, right? So it wasn't copying anything. So we're looking at exponential growth. And of course, there's many, many, many variables going into this, including infrastructure issues, right? At some point, it become, maybe your infrastructure issue is literally power generation, right? And it takes a long time to spin up nuclear power plants. And so what do you do in the meantime? But what you can know is that there is tons of capital and tons of intelligence going to solving these bottlenecking issues or mitigating them. And you and I, and this, like the amount of money and the number of people and the amount of creativity and thought and the dynamism of the primarily American startup ecosystem is unfathomable. It is fast and it is vast. And you and I have no idea what's going on the cutting edge. We just can't keep up with it. It's starting to become the point that humans can't either. Guess what's going to be very good at keeping up with it and helping VCs make investment decisions and then eventually doing it themselves, AI. And by eventually, I mean bloody soon, right? But, I mentioned, for example, the ocean-based power centers, and there are hundreds or thousands of other bets going on to debottleneck this, to allow it to continue to double in capability. And so when you're feeling this reflexive sense of, but AI will stop, it will slow down, it will plateau, there'll be breaks because of X unsolved problem. Like the fact that it is unsolved, or the fact that you don't know the solution, you and I don't know the solution, we have not imagined it as lay people, has nothing to do with what the future is going to look like. The amount of money to be made, the fact that Anthropic is 10xing its revenue year over year, and the amount of money to be made for continuing to improve its capability at that exponential rate is vast. Lots and lots of resources going into solving it. I'm not going to have any comment on the morality or ethics of this. Some people will say, well, that money should be sent over here, which, has been said of pretty much all money forever. The thing that's really going to crack this open is when AI seriously begins to improve itself. And this is a scary moment when you sort of let AI go and say, hey, do the research, experiment on yourself, start improving your own capability without us checking in, without us making the decisions and driving. Right now in Anthropic, I think what's going on, again, July 2026, because it's going to get dated real fast. That's half the point here, right? As of July 2026, a big part of what's going on in Anthropic is they're allowing AI to be a partner in a lot of developing its own next research tasks, and more or less saying that it's doing a pretty good job being a partner in this. So if it gets a little bit better, it's going to be better than humans at next step judgments. And it's going to be better than humans at writing and merging code. And it will have a meta capability to be able to write and merge code and test whether, very quickly test whether it's improving on various exams of its own capability. And if it isn't, maybe it'll roll it back on its own, etc. This is literally just around the corner. This is scary. Anthropic is even raising its hand and saying, we might want to do a global slowdown. We might want to all get together and decide, hey, we're going to slow things down. We're going to keep things safe. We need to have some collective action on this in order to prevent it from going off the rails. Anthropic, their stated primary purpose is alignment. And alignment means that the AI's interests and our interests are aligned. So it wants to help us rather than get us out of the way. right? And so you all know those doomsday scenarios, like you've seen The Matrix, right? If you think of the sci-fi, you know those doomsday scenarios where AI goes off the rails and kills everyone. I'm not going to worry about it, in part because I don't understand it and I can't do anything about it. I can't prepare for it. If AI decides to go off the rails and kill everyone, I'm going to die. And so they're working on alignment in order to prevent Skynet from happening. But I think it's unlikely because of the nature of collective action problems. I think it's unlikely you're going to get the globe green to do this. It's a little bit like global warming, where what you really want, what any one country or organization really wants is for everybody else to slow down and for me to keep going. And it will be very, very hard very, very soon to be able to to be able to know all of the actors playing and prevent any of them from creating a runaway AI. So there's actually this pressure to create the biggest, best, baddest, fastest, most powerful AI that is aligned, because the AI, the big bad power, or the big awesome powerful aligned AI might be able to stop the other AIs in a way that we can't, right? If they go bad, as long as you're the most powerful force, right? You can do something about it. And so there's this pressure to keep going. There's so much pressure to keep going. And once AI starts improving itself, all bets are off. Now, I am basing this off of research from AI researchers this is their full-time job. The best article that I've read on this is AI 2027. I'll put in the notes, ai-2027.com. It is on sort of one end of the spectrum of predictions, but it's also made by, I think, some of the most qualified, most sophisticated thinkers about AI. The thing that so far seems very difficult to dispute is that there is an accelerating rate of growth of AI's capability. There's an accelerating rate of growth of AI's capability. And if it does begin self-improvement, once it gets good at it, it will go even faster because it can work a lot faster than humans. It can iterate a lot faster than humans. Once it's a little bit smarter than humans at this, that rate will explode because human capability will no longer be the bottleneck on, it would be a smarter thing that's able to make itself smarter. We can't do that because we're stuck with the same hardware, firmware, and essentially software, right? We're stuck with this brain and the way it works. Not so with AI. AI, I sincerely believe, has every reason to surpass humanity intelligence. There's just nothing fundamental about, it's not like the speed of light. Humanity's intelligence is just a place in time, based on an evolutionary meat machine that sort of accidentally developed all sorts of like reasoning and creativity and self-awareness through this very hodgepodge evolutionary process that happens unbelievably slowly with lots of flaws, and it cannot update itself. I can't go muck with my brain to make it better. Not in any meaningful way. Not so with AI. There are already ways in which it is roughly as smart as we are. There are some ways in which it's not as capable. But given that it seems difficult to dispute that this growth could continue, that there isn't a hard physical break on it, it seems unlikely that humans are going to get together and say, for an extended period of time, maybe forever, we will not allow AI to get smarter than us. It seems very difficult to do, and most people don't want to do it. And there's actually a lot of reasons to not do it, because very, very smart AI can do a lot of things to help a lot of people who are starving to death and dying of malaria. So there's a lot of ethical argument for going ahead as fast as possible. Not as fast as possible, fast. And if those two things are difficult to dispute, the accelerating rate, three things. The accelerating rate, the potential for something to be smarter than us, and the drive to make it smarter than us. If that rate is accelerating, which it seems to be, then in a year, AI is going to be much smarter than it is now versus a year ago, right? We're at the beginning of the chessboard. We're at the beginning of the chessboard. When you think about what AI is going to look and feel like in the next 5, 10, 25 years, right? 25 years is 2051. Well within my lifetime, hopefully. If you project out how AI could change, it is inconceivable to you, as it is inconceivable to me, I could not conceive that AI was going to become my new designer. Claude just popped out a design feature recently, and it's incredible. It's awesome. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for Google's VO3. I wasn't ready for Claude Code. Since I wasn't in AI at the time, I kind of blinked and suddenly Claude Code was everywhere. Right? These things, these truly revolutionary changes to all sorts of industries are coming multiple times per year. And they're going to come faster than that next year, and then even faster the next year. I do think we are at what's called the singularity. If you don't think we're at what's called the singularity, and what is the singularity? Excuse me. It's the horizon. I like calling it the event horizon better because it's the point at which when you look forward, like you cannot reasonably predict the future anymore because it's going to change way too fast. And I'll talk about the sci-fi problems in a sec here. But this point where not only you can't predict the future from any point kind of past that because it's changing too fast. It's changing too fast for us to keep up and adjust and settle down. Every other technological revolution in the past has settled, has plateaued. Agriculture, print, steam, electricity, the computer, the internet. There's a shift, right? There's this impulse. There's this huge shift. A lot of capital went into it, and people, labor changed, right? The computer and internet revolution led to millions and millions of people becoming software engineers, and they were able to do that because there was a settling that created a relatively static, for decades, role for humans called software engineer that we could spend some years getting pretty good at and then keep doing for a few decades. You see where I'm going with this? But each of these revolutions that AI brings, right, the next one is going to come even faster. AI is not a revolution. AI is a revolution-generating machine, a revolution-generating technology that creates revolutionary technology, right? The fact that I can use prompts to create video, right, that is a technology. It's built on AI. There's a company in Somerville called Generalist. It's one of many robotics companies, and it's building the platform for robots with sort of like hands and eyes to be able to interact with the world, fold laundry, stack stuff, throw stuff, but then it sorts. You have a bunch of screws, it sorts them into the right boxes, right? It's going to be welding soon, I think. They're building that platform, and they're building it to the point, they're planning to build to the point that you can prompt it. You can just say, hey, there's all these screws, put them in the right, in the way that you would a human. This stuff's coming fast. And so each of these is those robots, once they get relatively good, they will be a technological revolution the way that automation was in the 50s. And then they're going to get better, a lot faster all the time. And then more and more and more of these technologies will be spit out. And the fact that you and I can't sit here and imagine what they will be is irrelevant to the fact that they're coming at an accelerating rate. We also, I think largely because of sci-fi, just have this sense that the future of AI is it's roughly as smart as us and we are partners, right? Star Trek, we have data, right? And AI is contained in these big expensive bodies, or it's kind of in the ship's computer. The ship's computer isn't as smart as, Captain Picard. Yes, I'm a Picard guy, deal with it. When we think of AI in its friendly form, C-3PO, you're just a person. A lot of sci-fi doesn't even really include AI. And a big part of that is that once AI gets smart enough, there isn't much of a drama for humans to have. There's going to be this moment where you realize that in a very realistic timeline, there's going to be something that's smarter than us, meaningfully smarter than us, sort of across the board. And then, once it gets meaningfully smarter than us, it's just going to keep getting smarter than us. And what are the implications of that? I'll explore what those could be in the next few episodes. They are clearly impossible to predict. Once we start dealing with something that is smarter than us and getting even smarter than us, it is, of course, an absurd proposition to try to predict what could happen. But we've never, ever dealt with having to think about something being smarter than us, right? As a species, we really love kind of being at the center of the universe and being special. And we have this very powerful implicit reaction against not being special, not being the center of the universe, right? This is why when we found out that the Earth revolves around the sun, a lot of people died, right? Galileo was thrown in jail. People were really mad about that. They didn't want it to be true. They didn't want it to be true that the Earth is just a speck upon a speck upon a speck upon a speck in an unbelievably large universe. We didn't want it to be true that we evolved just like animals, that we weren't just popped into existence by a creator, built perfectly to reflect that creator, right, in God's image, in a day, from some dirt and a rib. We don't like that. And a lot of us these days have accepted it. We still have flat earthers because there's this psychological desire for the Earth to be at the center of everything. We still have, creationists. I mean, it's absurd what people are able to choose to be blind to, right? What they're capable of closing their eyes to and pretending isn't there in front of them. I think this is going to be one of them. I think it already is one of them. And I think that the psychological intensity of this denial is going to be such that the denial is going to keep coming, and then AI is going to keep breaking through whatever the kind of pessimistic or conservative prediction was, and then it will just keep coming. And many people will take a very long time, if ever, to realize, wait a minute, all of my predictions over the past however many years have been wrong. And so, in the spirit of reconsider, where I don't actually want to do the thinking for you, obviously go do some of your own research. But one thing you can do over the next few months and years is do a little bit of predicting of your own, right? Do a little bit of predicting of your own and see how it turns out. And we still got a few months and years. We're at the early part of that chessboard. But as you might imagine, the implications for economics, politics, media, education, every single meaningful or every single human endeavor that is about affecting other people in some way, and just about every single endeavor that is about changing, altering our own experience internally, is going to change, and it's going to change fast, and it's going to keep changing. We're already seeing it begin in the economy. We're seeing the early signs of it being very, very difficult to get into certain fields because AI is already better than entry-level employees at it. We're already seeing that education is frankly collapsing. Education is frankly collapsing, and nobody has an answer. I've not seen one good one. I'll talk about what I think the answer is. I don't even know if it's a good one. There's this great article called "Education in the Age of AI is a Wicked Problem," because new curriculum will be obsolete long before the curriculum has been rolled out. What are we going to do? So I'm going to get more into that. Over the next episodes, I will talk about AI, and I will also start talking about a lot of the research that I've been doing on the nature of the human mind and psychology. So we're getting out of contemporary politics in the sense. I do think contemporary politics now is, one, a clown show, and two, sort of pushing around the deck chairs on the Titanic. I think we will look back fairly shortly and find that the changes that are coming are so vast that the things we're getting really hung up about today in the political arena don't seem all that important, won't seem all that important. So we'll get into those two threads together, AI and what it's going to do, and then the human mind and psychology, in part because those two things are the things you need to understand as they come together in order to be able to decide what you're going to do in a future that is going to be changing very quickly. So with that, it's a pleasure to be back. It's a pleasure to be back. Those of you who listened years ago, thank you for listening. Thank you for trying us out again. I hope you like what's changed. I hope you like what we're trying to do now. I hope if you disagree with me, you'll disagree with me in a spirit of thoughtfulness so that you can ask some questions. If there's something I've totally whiffed factually, as always, ready and let me know. I think this is a wicked problem. All of it's a wicked problem, not just education. I want to solve it with you. And so you'll hear a lot more from me in the next months and years. So glad to be back. I'll see you soon. This is Eric, signing off.